The image of a masked man throwing a bouquet of flowers instead of a weapon is everywhere. It's on coffee mugs, t-shirts and massive canvases in billionaire penthouses. That's the Banksy we think we know. The shadow in the night, the voice for the voiceless, the guy sticking it to the man. But if you look at the sheer amount of money moving around his name, the picture starts to get a lot more complicated. We have to face a pretty weird reality. The world's most famous anti-capitalist is now one of the most profitable brands on the planet. To understand how we ended up here, we have to look back at where he started. We're talking about the early 90s in Bristol. This wasn't a world of climate-controlled galleries or auction hammers. It was a world of wet pavement, late-night adrenaline, and the constant threat of a jail cell. Banksy was just another kid with a spray can, part of a scene that was more about reclaiming the streets than making a profit. So yes, he was free-handing his graffiti, which is a slow, methodical process. But the problem with being slow is that the cops are usually faster. After one specific night where he spent hours hiding under a garbage truck to avoid being caught, he realised something had to change. If he wanted to survive, he had to be efficient. He started cutting stencils. This wasn't some high-concept artistic choice at first. It was a survival tactic. He could prep the image at home, hit the wall in 90 seconds, and be gone before the sirens even rounded the corner. But this shifted something he probably didn't expect. It created a visual language that was punchy, clean, and incredibly easy to recognise. More importantly, it allowed him to remain invisible. By taking himself out of the physical act of painting for hours on end, he turned himself into a ghost. That invisibility became his greatest asset. In an art world that's obsessed with the cult of personality, where the artist's face, their clothes and their social circle are often more important than the paint on the canvas, Banksy gave them nothing. He refused to show his face. He refused to give interviews. He became the invisible man of the art world. When he won the Art's Greatest Living Britain award in 2007, he didn't show up. The absence didn't make people forget him, it made them obsessed. He created a massive empty space where his identity should be, and the public rushed in to fill it with their own theories. He became a folk hero, a modern-day Robin Hood who used a spray can instead of a bow and arrow. But here's where the Banksy effect starts to take a dark turn. As his fame grew, his work stopped being just a message and started being an asset. The very people he was mocking, the billionaires, the hedge fund managers, the elite, realised that a Banksy piece was a better investment than gold. This created a bizarre, almost slapstick reality. He would go into a neglected working-class neighbourhood and paint a mural criticising the government or the police. Within 48 hours, property developers would show up with power saws. But they weren't there to clean the graffiti. They were there to cut the literal bricks out of the wall so they could ship them to an auction house in London or New York. Think about the irony of that for a second. An artist paints a piece about the struggles of the poor on a public wall, and the result is that the wall is stolen and sold to a private collector for $1 million. The street art meant for the community is gone, and in its place, a hole in a building. Even worse, the presence of his art actually accelerates the destruction of the neighbourhood he's trying to highlight. It's called art washing. When a Banksy appears on a street, the street becomes cool. When it becomes cool, the property values skyrocket. The local residents, the people Banksy is supposedly speaking for, get priced out. They can't afford the rent anymore because a world-famous artist used their building as a canvas. The rebel stencil becomes a beacon for gentrification. Banksy isn't blind to this. He spent a lot of his career trying to sabotage the very market that feeds him. One of the most famous examples was back in 2013, during his Better Out Than In residency in New York. He set up a tiny, nondescript stall near Central Park with an old man sitting behind a table full of original, signed Banksy canvases. They were priced at $60 each. Thousands of people walked past. Only a few bought them, mostly just as souvenirs. The next day, he revealed on his website that they were all authentic. It was a brilliant way to show that the art world is a total sham. People didn't want the art, they wanted the brand. Without the hype and the gallery lighting, the work was invisible to the very people who claimed to love it. But even this backfired. The people who were lucky enough to buy those $60 paintings suddenly found themselves holding assets worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. The attempt to make art affordable and accessible only ended up creating more wealth for a handful of people. Every time he tries to break the machine just gets bigger. This reached a peak of absolute absurdity in 2018 at Sotheby's. His famous girl with the balloon was on the auction block. The hammer went down at $1.4 million. And at that exact moment, a shredder hidden inside the frame turned on. The audience watched in shock as the painting slid through the bottom in strips. It was supposed to be the ultimate middle finger to the auction house. Banksy even posted a video of it with a quote about the urge to destroy being a creative urge. But look what actually happened. Sotheby's didn't panic. They didn't even cancel the sale. They realised that the shredded version was now a unique piece of performance art history. It was renamed Love is in the Bin, and a few years later, it sold for over $25 million. Banksy's attempt to destroy his work actually multiplied its value by 20. He tried to kill the commodity, and instead he created the most expensive accident in art history. It proves that the art market is a black hole. Nothing, not even a shredder, can escape its gravity. And this is where the enabler argument gets really heavy. Because Banksy's work moves so much money, he provides the art world with something it desperately needs: relevance. Traditional high art feels like a closed-door club for people who with too much money and not enough to do. Banksy brings the heat of the street into those cold rooms. He gives collectors a way to feel edgy and subversive, while they're actually just participating in the most elite form of consumerism. He's the entry point. He makes it okay for a billionaire to feel like a rebel because they have a painting of a riot on their wall. Even his more recent ventures, like his gross domestic product shop or his online sales, have this weird gatekeeping vibe. To buy a piece, you often have to answer a question like, is art important? It's a clever way to weed out corporate flippers and make sure the art goes to real fans. But at the end of the day, it's still a luxury product with an extremely limited supply. It still relies on the same mechanics of scarcity and hype that drive prices of Rolexes and Ferraris. He is the person who gets to decide who is worthy of his rebellion, which is a pretty powerful position for someone who claims to hate the hierarchy. But we have to look at what he does with that power. Unlike most artists who are pulling in these kinds of numbers, Banksy isn't buying super yachts or private islands. He's funding rescue boats like the Louise Michael to save refugees in the Mediterranean. He's building hospitals in Palestine. He's funneling massive amounts of cash into grassroots movements that the mainstream world ignores. He's essentially become a one-man NGO funded by the excess of the rich. He's playing a very dangerous game. He has to stay cool enough to keep his prices high so that he can keep funding these massive humanitarian projects. He has to feed the beast so he can use the beast's money to do good. It's a moral tightrope. If he becomes too mainstream, the work loses its bite and the value drops. If he stays too underground, he doesn't have the resources to make a real-world impact. He's trapped in a loop where he has to be the world's most successful sellout just to afford to be a revolutionary. There's also the question of his influence on the next generation. Because Banksy is so successful, thousands of younger artists are following in his footsteps, but they aren't necessarily following his politics. They're following his business model. Street art, which used to be about community and raw expression, has increasingly become a marketing wing for art careers. Young artists are looking for that one viral stencil that will get them a gallery show. They're painting rebellion because they know it sells. In this way, Banksy hasn't just enabled the system, he's accidentally rewritten the map for how to join it. So where does that leave us? Is Banksy a victim of his own success? Probably. He's a guy who wanted to change the world with a spray can and ended up becoming a blue-chip asset. He's a man who wanted to stay invisible but ended up being the most talked about person in contemporary culture. He's the ultimate paradox. Every time he throws a punch at the system just catches his hand and puts a diamond ring on his finger. He's a mirror for all of us. He shows us that in our modern world, There is no outside. You can't just walk away from the system because the system owns the ground you're walking on. Even our most sincere attempts to be different or to fight back are immediately captured, packaged and sold back to us as a lifestyle choice. Banksy is the proof that even the most radical ideas can be turned into a limited edition item if you wait long enough. In the end, maybe the real Banksy isn't the person who painted the stencils. Maybe the real Banksy is the chaos he creates. The way he forces us to look at how much we value money over meaning. He's turned the entire global art market into a piece of performance art. We are the audience, watching the rich buy back the images of their own destruction, and we're all part of the show. Whether he's a rebel or a revenue stream doesn't really matter anymore. He's both. And the fact that we can't tell where the rebellion ends and the profit begins is exactly the point he's been trying to make all along. The system didn't only win this time, it made him its mascot. And he's using that position to scream as loud as he can before the next auction hammer falls. What do you think? Has Banksy been had? Or has he been doing the having? Or did you never really like that Banksy anyway? Let us know in the comments below. Stay tuned for more of Art's Wonders.